When I was 58, my daughter forged my signature and sold my hardware store out from under me. She and her husband packed up their kids and drove off to Arizona without so much as a goodbye. They left me exactly $200 in a sticky note on my workshop door that read, "You're not our problem anymore." 14 years later, my grandson typed my name into a search engine for a school project and called his mother screaming. Within 10 hours, I had 180 missed calls from the daughter who signed away everything I had ever built. Before I go any further, tell me in the comments where you're watching this from tonight. And if you've ever had family look you in the eye and decide you were worth less than what they could take from you, hit that like button before we start. The overhead light in my workshop had one bad ballast that buzzed whenever the temperature dropped, and that night it wouldn't stop humming. I sat on the old stool by the workbench, my phone face up beside a coffee can full of wood screws, watching the screen light up over and over in the dark. 60 missed calls, then 90. By the time I finally picked it up, the number read 181. I didn't say hello. I just held the phone to my ear and listened. There was breathing on the other end, ragged and uneven, like someone who'd been crying for longer than they wanted to admit. Then a voice cracked down the middle, young enough that it still had some boy left in it. "Grandpa?" That single word landed somewhere behind my ribs. I hadn't heard it directed at me in 14 years. I closed my eyes and let the silence stretch, because I needed a moment before I trusted my own voice not to shake. "Grandpa, please don't hang up," he said. I didn't know. I swear on everything I didn't know. I was doing a report for my economics class. We had to profile a small business owner who built something from nothing, and I typed your name in just to see if there was anything left of you online. "Grandpa, there's an article from a business journal. It says you own 11 stores now. It says you're worth—" His voice broke apart completely. "Grandpa, is that really you?" I opened my eyes and looked at the ceiling of the workshop I'd built with my own hands twice. Once at 26 and again at 59, after I had nothing left but a truck and a toolbox. "Yes, Caleb," I said. "It's me." He made a sound like something tearing loose in his chest. "They told me you moved away and didn't want us. They told me you chose your business over your own family, and that's why we never saw you again." "Grandpa, I'm 19. I've believed that my whole life." I let out a breath I felt like I'd been holding since he was 5 years old. "Your mother told you a version of events that was convenient for her," I said. "I think it's time you heard the rest of it. But not tonight. Not like this, with you falling apart on the phone at midnight. Get some sleep. Call me tomorrow when you're steady, and I'll tell you everything." He didn't want to hang up. I understood that. Some part of him was afraid that if he let go of the line, I'd disappear again the way I had from his side of the story, anyway, 14 years earlier. But eventually he agreed, and the workshop went quiet except for that humming ballast, and I sat there a long time with the phone in my lap, feeling 14 years of carefully rebuilt calm start to crack down the middle. My name is Walter Briggs. I'm 72 years old. And to understand what happened that night, you have to go back to the spring I turned 58, to a hardware store on Route 9 that I built from a single rented garage into the beating heart of a town called Millbrook, Ohio. I opened Briggs Hardware and Supply the year I turned 26, back when a man could still get a small loan on a handshake and a business plan scribbled on the back of a receipt. My wife Diane and I ran it together for 30 years, side by side, her doing the books and me doing everything else, until the cancer took her when our daughter Renee was just 22. After that, it was me and Renee. I taught her how to run a register, how to talk to contractors, how to spot when a supplier was overcharging you by 3 cents a unit and let it slide anyway because you needed the relationship more than the 3 cents. I thought I was teaching her a trade. I thought I was teaching her how to survive. What I didn't understand, not for years, was that I was also teaching her son-in-law Marcus how to read a set of financial statements he had absolutely no right to be looking at. Marcus came into Renee's life when she was 29, smooth-talking, quick with a compliment, the kind of man who shook your hand a half-second too long and called you "sir" in a way that felt like a performance rather than respect. I never trusted him completely, but Renee loved him, and I told myself that was enough. I gave him a job in the store inventory management, mostly because Renee asked me to, and because I wanted, more than anything, for my daughter to be happy. For 6 years, Marcus worked in that store, learning every corner of it. He learned the supplier contacts, he learned the tax filings, he learned that I had, over 3 decades, Quietly built up equity, not just in the business, but in the land underneath it. 4 acres just off the interstate that a logistics company had been sniffing around for a distribution hub. He learned, eventually, that I had signed a power of attorney over to Renee 2 years earlier, after a heart scare landed me in the hospital for 11 days. It was meant to be a safety net. In case something happened to me while I was under anesthesia, my daughter could keep the lights on and the payroll running. I trusted her with it completely. I never imagined I needed to protect myself from my own child. I found out what they'd done on a Tuesday morning in October. I drove to the store the way I had almost every morning for 32 years. Coffee in the cup holder, radio on the classic country station, and there was a moving truck backed up to the loading dock. Not a delivery truck, a moving truck, orange and white, with 2 men I'd never seen loading out the register systems, the specialty tool cabinets, even the antique cash register from 1961 that had sat by the front door since the day I opened. I parked crooked. I didn't even put it in park all the way before I got out. "What in God's name is going on here?" I said, and one of the movers looked at me with genuine confusion, like I was the one out of place. "Sir, we're just following the work order," he said. "Everything's been sold. New owners taking possession Thursday." I stood in the parking lot of the store I had built with my own 2 hands, in the town where I had buried my wife, and I felt the ground actually seemed to tilt beneath me. I called Renee's cell phone. It rang twice and went to voicemail. I called the store's landline, which was somehow already disconnected. I drove to Renee's house, 12 minutes away, and found it empty, not just quiet, empty, with tire tracks in the gravel driveway and a for sale sign already staked into the front lawn. On my workshop door at home, the little detached garage behind my house where I kept my personal tools, separate from the store, there was a single sheet of yellow legal paper taped at eye level. I still have it. I will always have it. Dad, the store, the land, all of it, it's done. Marcus found a buyer who moved fast and we took the deal. We left you $200 in an envelope taped under the workbench. You're not our problem anymore. We need our own life, away from this town, away from your rules. Don't try to find us. Renee, $200. Under the workbench, in an envelope with grease stains on it from where it had been sitting for who knows how long before they finally left. $200 for 32 years of a life's work. For a marriage that built that store brick by brick. For the last name over the door that used to mean something in that town. I want to tell you I fell apart. I didn't, not right away. I think shock is a strange mercy. It holds the real grief at arm's length just long enough for you to do the practical things a person has to do. I called a lawyer that same afternoon. His name was Harold Whitfield, and he'd handled my will and my store's incorporation papers for 15 years. I laid the whole thing out for him, the power of attorney, the forged additional signature Marcus had apparently added to the sale documents, the 4 acres, all of it. Harold looked at me over his glasses for a long moment. "Walter, I have to be straight with you," he said. "A power of attorney gives someone enormous latitude. If Renee signed as your agent, and the documents show her as acting within that authority, this is not going to be a quick fix. This could take years and every dollar you don't have anymore to prove fraud instead of a lawful, if morally repugnant, use of power you gave her yourself. Years. I was 58 years old with $200 in my pocket and a truck with a quarter tank of gas, and my lawyer was telling me the fight to get any of it back could eat the rest of my working life. So I made a decision that night, sitting in that dark workshop with the yellow note in my hands that would define the next 14 years of my life. I would not spend what remained of my strength chasing a daughter who had already made her choice. I would build something new, something entirely mine, something with my name on it that no signature but my own could ever sign away. I sold the workshop tools I didn't absolutely need. I took a job managing inventory logistics for a regional supply chain company 2 counties over, using every ounce of knowledge Marcus had once learned by watching me. I worked 80-hour weeks. I slept in a rented room above a laundromat for the first 11 months because every spare dollar went into a small logistics consulting side venture. I started on nights and weekends helping small hardware and supply stores across 3 states negotiate better freight contracts. The exact expertise, 32 years in that business, had carved into my bones. By year 3, that side venture had 6 employees. By year 6, it had become Briggs Freight Solutions, and I had bought my first warehouse outright in cash because I had promised myself I would never again put my name on a document someone else could quietly twist against me. By year 10, I had 11 regional distribution hubs across the Midwest and a reputation in a very unglamorous but very profitable industry as the man who could fix a broken supply chain faster than anyone in 3 states. Business journals started calling, not the flashy ones, the trade publications that mattered to the people who mattered. One of them ran a profile on me the year I turned 70, the quiet titan of Midwest logistics. I never once mentioned Renee's name in that interview. I never mentioned the store. I let the world believe I had simply always been this man. I never remarried. I never had another child. What I did have, quietly, without anyone in my old life knowing, was a private fund I built specifically for one purpose for the day, if it ever came, that Caleb might need to know the truth. That day arrived on a Tuesday night, 14 years after the moving truck, with a 19-year-old boy sobbing into a phone in the dark. Caleb called me back the next afternoon, steadier, and we talked for 2 hours. I told him everything, the power of attorney, the store, the note, the $200. I could hear him going quiet in a different way than the night before, the quiet of someone rebuilding an entire childhood in real time, brick by brick, and watching the foundation come apart. "She told me you left us," he said finally. "She told me you cared more about the store than about me and Mom. I used to be angry at you. I used to be angry at a man I never even got the chance to actually know." "I know," I said, "and I'm not going to spend the next hour telling you all the ways your mother wronged me. That's not why I picked up the phone last night, and it's not why I'm on it with you now. I picked up because it was you. We started talking every week, then twice a week. I learned he was studying business at a state college 2 hours from where I now lived, working nights at a warehouse to cover what his financial aid didn't, driving a car with a check engine light that had been on for 8 months because he couldn't afford to find out what it meant. He never once asked me for money. I noticed that immediately, and it told me more about the young man he'd become than anything else could have. It was Caleb, not me, who set the collision course in motion. 3 months after that first phone call, he told me his mother and Marcus were hosting an anniversary gala, 20 years married, at a hotel ballroom in Scottsdale, with 200 guests from Marcus's new real estate development business, the one built, I would come to learn, almost entirely on capital raised from investors who had no idea the man's early business credibility had been manufactured from a stolen hardware store and a forged signature. "They want me to give a toast," Caleb told me, his voice tight. "Grandpa, I don't think I can stand up there and lie for them anymore." I thought about that for 3 days. And then I called Harold Whitfield, retired now, but he still took my calls, and I called my own legal counsel, a sharp, quiet woman named Priyanka Desai, who had spent 6 years building an ironclad paper trail I never told her the full purpose of, not until that week. I told her everything. I told her I wanted the truth in that ballroom, documented, undeniable, delivered not as an act of revenge but as an act of correction. "You understand," Priyanka said. "Once this is public, there's no taking it back. Marcus's investors will see it. His business could collapse overnight." "His business," I said, "was built on a felony my daughter's husband committed against her own father. I didn't build that collapse. He did, 14 years ago. I'm just finally turning on the light." The night of the gala, I did not attend as a guest. I sat in a car in the parking structure across the street with Priyanka beside me, a thick folder on her lap, watching the ballroom windows glow gold 200 feet away. Inside, Caleb stood at a microphone in a rented tuxedo, his hands visibly shaking, 3 sentences into a toast he could not finish. He set the toast card down on the podium. "I can't do this," he said, and his voice carried clean through the room because someone, somewhere, had left the sound system too hot. "I can't stand up here and toast 20 years of a marriage that started with my mother and stepfather stealing my grandfather's entire life's work and leaving him $200 and a note telling him he wasn't their problem anymore." The room went the particular kind of silent that only happens when 200 wealthy strangers realize they are watching something real instead of something rehearsed. Marcus was on his feet instantly, his face gone, a deep, dangerous red, moving toward the stage with the kind of speed a man only finds when his entire manufactured identity is coming apart in front of the investors funding his next development deal. He did not calmly ask Caleb to step down. He came at him. I heard about this part secondhand, but 3 separate guests described it the same way, with his fist already cocked back, screaming for Caleb to shut his mouth, close enough that two off-duty officers working hotel security had to physically tackle him to the ballroom floor before he reached his own stepson. That was the moment Priyanka and I walked in. I did not say a word to Renee at first. I walked past her, past the frozen faces of 200 people in cocktail attire, straight to the podium where my grandson stood shaking, and I put my hand on his shoulder, and I felt him exhale for what might have been the first time in 14 years. Then I turned to the room. "My name is Walter Briggs," I said. 14 years ago, my daughter and her husband forged documents to sell a business I spent 32 years building, along with 4 acres of land, and left me $200 in an envelope taped under a workbench. I want to be very clear about why I'm telling you this tonight, in front of all of you. It is not for revenge. It's because every one of you in this room has put money into a business built on a lie, and you deserve to know the truth before you put in $1 more. Priyanka stepped forward and handed the hotel's general counsel, who happened to be standing near the stage, because of course he was a copy of the folder. Forensic handwriting analysis on the sale documents. The forged secondary signature. A sworn statement from the original buyer's attorney, who years later, unprompted, had reached out to my legal team after his own conscience finally caught up with him, confirming he'd been told at the time that the seller's signature was authenticated when it was not. Renee stood frozen by the dessert table the entire time, her hand pressed over her mouth, and when I finally looked directly at her, she did not look angry. She looked like a woman watching 14 years of a story she'd told herself about who she was collapse in real time. I didn't press charges against Renee that night. I want to be honest about that, because I think the audience deserves the honest version, not the tidy one. Marcus faced fraud and forgery charges that, over the following year, resulted in a plea deal and 18 months served, along with a civil judgment that dissolved his development company and returned a portion of investor capital. Renee was never criminally charged, the statute of limitations, and the murky question of what she knew versus what Marcus executed under her authority made it legally complicated. And honestly, some exhaustion in me didn't want to spend what strength I had left chasing that fight. But she lost everything Marcus's business had built. The house, the cars, the country club membership. She moved into a small rental 2 towns over from where Caleb goes to college. And as far as I know, she still lives there. Caleb did not move in with me, and he did not take a single dollar from the fund I'd quietly built for him over 14 years, not directly. What he took, instead, was my insistence that he finish his degree on his own terms, working his own job, driving his own car with its check engine light, and that any money I eventually gave him would come only after he'd proven to himself, not to me, to himself, that he didn't need it to become who he was going to become. He graduates this spring. He has a logistics analyst position lined up at a company 2 states away, entirely on his own merit, a job he got without my name ever coming up in the interview. He visits me most Sundays. We don't talk about Renee much. We talk about supply chains, about the mistakes I made building the first store, about a girl he's cautiously optimistic about. Last month he asked me, almost sideways, almost afraid of the answer, whether I'd ever forgive his mother. Forgiveness and trust aren't the same animal, I told him. I've made my peace with what happened. That doesn't mean I hand the reins back to somebody who already showed me, in writing, exactly what she thought I was worth. I still have that yellow note. It isn't hidden away anymore. It sits in a small frame in the lobby of Briggs Freight Solutions headquarters beside the original $200 bills, exactly as they were, never spent. I get asked about it sometimes by new employees who assume it's some kind of motivational plaque. I tell them the truth now. I tell all of them the truth now. I am 72 years old. I lost a daughter to greed dressed up as a fresh start, and it took every year I had left in me to build something no one could quietly sign away again. But I got my grandson back, not because I bought him back, but because I refused to. And if there's one thing I've learned in 14 years of rebuilding a life from a workshop and a coffee can full of screws, it's this. The people who decide you're not their problem anymore are, sooner or later. I'm going to have to explain that decision to everyone watching. Family isn't the people who share your blood. It's the people who show up and stay and never once make you feel like $200 was ever a fair price for your life. If you believe respect has to be earned and never just assumed, tell me in the comments where you're watching from tonight and who in your life taught you that the hard way. Hit like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next story.